Welcome everybody to our first actual segment of the 24/7 stream. So I keep calling it 24/7 for some reason, just a 24-hour stream.
You can call it whatever you want.
It's done. We're doing it for a week, 24/7.
You can be on the screen as well, Durka. Like this is a.
I'm not saying it.
You've seen HellRaisers. This is. Yeah, Zoe's going to be able to provide some excellent expert analysis as well. So the first thing that we're going to be doing here is I actually wanted to take some time to break down some of the teams that maybe you guys don't look at as much. The first one we're going to be going over is HellRaisers, so obviously a little bit more of a known team by now. If you look at it maybe just a month ago, a lot of people wouldn't have known HellRaisers, would have heard of them, but maybe didn't imagine that they would be like placing top slot in DAC and that sort of thing. So I kind of wanted to go over, like, just break down the team, look at some of their good strengths, look at some of their weaknesses, and then just in general explore a team that maybe you haven't looked at as much. So HellRaisers being the first team just because they're one of a personal favorite of mine. They used to be known as Compass Gaming. Excluding Dread, it was the four of HellRaisers that were all together on Compass Gaming. And one of their first real tournaments that they showed some actual strength in was the Gigabyte Challenge. The Gigabyte Challenge, I think it was like number 7 or 8. Somewhere in there. It was somewhere during the summer of last year that they came in, and the first day they just kicked ass. And they were kicking ass up against teams that were around their same skill level. You kind of imagine, like, My Insanity at the time. They also were facing up against another, like, lower tier 2, tier 3 team. But the difference is that if you actually look at the games, the enemy wasn't really making any real big mistakes. It was just that there were smaller mistakes that HellRaisers was really good at exploiting. Plus, they had pretty solid drafts at the time, and I felt like this was a team that could actually do a lot. And sure enough, they actually went on and beat Power Rangers, I believe. Or no, they lost to Power Rangers in the semifinals the first time around. But I was like, you know what? They still got this. The next time they showed up at the Gigabyte Challenge, they went on to the full finals and ended up losing to Team Dog, which was like, okay, at the time, like, that was Mouse Sports, the really good team. They took a game off of them, though, which was really impressive. So I saw a lot of potential in this team, and I wanted to continue following them as much as possible. So the breakdown that I have of this team, Toby's breaking the studio.
Holy shit!
Toby almost broke a monitor.
Holy shit!
And not a cheap one.
Wow. Anyway, the show must go on. So the characteristics of HR is...
a little bit too serious there for you, Cap.
He caught it.
You did catch it. Good reactions, Toby. So the characteristics of HellRaisers, their biggest pros would be a lot of good controlled aggression, which I say controlled in there because they're from the CIS region, so aggression is just kind of natural for them. But at the same time, they're able to most of the time keep their aggression in check so that they don't throw too much. Most of the matches that you see them lose are actually lost never from throwing. And I use throwing I just kind of throw that word out there, but I just mean that, some big mistakes when they have an advantage is kind of a throw for me, right? So if they just played more controlled, more patiently, you'd be able to win the game. Well, HR doesn't do that as much. Most of the matches that they actually lose are very early on. It's usually determined about 20 minutes in whether or not they're going to win or lose the match. A lot of times, one of the big downsides of HR is that they will oftentimes lose matches based entirely on the draft. They're really good at exploiting disadvantages or mistakes. So small mistakes that people make, HR is actually really good at being able to push that issue and exploit it for as much as they can possibly get. And we're going to go through, I think one of the best match that I found. I went through a lot of matches over the last 2 days of HR, and I think the best match was actually a recent one, and that was HellRaisers versus Power Rangers, Game 1 in the Dota Asian Championships. So this is their match this is actually technically Game 2 because they're going into this game with a 1-game advantage after going through the winner's bracket. This team comes out the gate looking really, really strong here. But I think the biggest thing that really I took from this game is that they could have done so much better in this match, but they got a little unlucky on certain things. So they come through in the draft. Their draft is pretty decent here. Their draft is not too bad. As I was saying earlier, I feel sometimes the draft is actually a big disadvantage for HellRaisers. In fact, they lose both game Game 2 and Game 3 up against Power Rangers due to purely the draft. By 20 minutes, they'd already lost the game. It was only Game 2 that they managed to kind of climb back into it because of some good plays, but they were at such a huge disadvantage at 20 minutes that they never should have won. So we go through the draft here, and they pick a lot of team fight heroes, plays into their aggression, but one of the biggest things here is if you look at this matchup, you can see a very simple layout, which is this full draft, Naga Siren in the safe lane, babysit by a Rubik and Ancient Apparition, Puck in the mid, Tidehunter off lane. Like, that would be your natural assumption of what the lanes are going to be. Power Rangers, though, with the Animage last pick, I believe kind of changed things for HellRaisers. I don't believe that they actually intended to do what they're going to do, which is an aggro try. If you look at it, going up against a Dazzle Ogre Magi is not really your idea of a good time. An aggro try up against those two very defensive supports, a lot of survivability between the two of them. Ogre Magi being on the front lines, having tons of armor and tons of HP. He's like the highest EHP hero in the game. I think like Spirit Breaker outdoes him by a bit. But he's one of the tankiest heroes in the game straight up at level 1. And then a Dazzle behind him. Like, that's really hard to be able to deal with that much defensive saving measures. And if PR actually had a carry that was any good in the laning phase, then they would have easily had a better tri-lane. But because they went an Animage, all of a sudden, HellRaisers decide to go for an aggro try. So the first thing that they do is they're going to smoke up. We're going to go really zoomed out camera for most of this. So they're going to go for a smoke. This is pretty typical HellRaisers to try and find some sort of exploit early on in the laning phase. What happens here is they get the first blood. Not really that big of a deal. But the important thing about this is that they turn the transition quickly into an aggro try. So they're actually going to be running Naga Siren, Ancient Apparition, Rubik together up against an Animage, Ogre Magi, and Dazzle. Durka, would you say that this lane is pretty even?
I'd say Radiant have the advantage because usually against an anti-mage in a tri-lane, you'd want to focus on the support.
Right.
You're not going to kill the AM, he's just going to blink away.
Right.
And Snare stops him blinking. Cold Feet couples up with Ensnare, then we've got Telekinesis. 3 spells which can stop AM blinking.
Right.
Plus Chilling Touch from the AA gives, and then the minus armor from Riptide gives them so many measures to actually take down the AM and ignore the supports.
Right.
The only thing they have to worry about is the Dazzle, but at level 1, 2, he's going to have Grave and Heal, and that's not going to be a massive factor.
Yeah.
They're at the very least going to take AM out of the lane completely for a good minute and a half.
Right, so the early level 1, they're definitely going to have a big advantage because the Ancient Apparition, the Naga Siren. But I would say that this aggro try isn't, would you say it's not like a huge advantage? Right, I wouldn't say that this aggro try is guaranteed to win. Like a lot of aggro tries that people run, aggro tries are always a risk, right? Yeah. It's a potential risk, and it's why when teams go for aggro tries, it's oftentimes very obvious. Like, oh, they clearly have a better aggro try. That's why, like back in the day, we saw Undying run an aggro tries because Undying just destroys tri-lanes versus tri-lanes engagements, right? So oftentimes when they're running an aggro try, it's very obvious. Here, I would say it's not quite as obvious. They have an advantage, but it's still a bit of a risk, right? So it's kind of like that risk-reward benefit where you're looking at it and going, yeah, we have an advantage in this try versus try engagement, but we're also running an aggro try, which is a bit of a risk. And if we lose this aggro try, we're going to be in some serious issues. Our Naga Siren's going to be having some serious problems with farming, being shut down kind of early on. So it is a bit of a risk, right?
Yeah.
But in this situation, if you look at what HR are actually trading off, you have a Tidehunter in the safe lane who's going to be going up against a Doom. Now, that's not the most advantageous lane that Tidehunter can get into. There's oftentimes other melees that are really, really easy to kill. But Doom, you're still going to be able to win that lane easily. I mean, any melee versus melee matchup, Tidehunter is going to be able to have an advantage.
I think Doom only ever wins that lane if he gets an Alpha Wolf creep and gets Orb of Venom. That's like the only way, and he gets some lucky crits.
Yeah.
I've played that lane so many times, and Tide wins 99% of the time unless you get those two components.
The attack damage, I mean, losing all your attack damage for every anchor smash that he's doing is a huge problem. Then on top of that, you have the fact that Doom has no armor, so the physical damage that is coming out from that anchor smash is actually doing a full amount to the Doom. And then our 1v1 matchup in the middle lane is actually going to be the Puck versus the Bat Rider. I would say fairly even matchup, but the important thing about this is HR reading both Doom as well as Bat Rider aren't going to be rotating. right? That's usually the biggest issue when you're running an aggro try, is that there could be a rotation from the mid. All of a sudden, they win one team fight. The defensive tri lane is up on experience, and then even if you had the better tri lane, since they have better experience, since they have more experience, since they have access to the pull and all those sorts of things, it very rapidly snowballs against you. But Batrider can't make a rotation early on. He needs to be able to farm up a Blink Dagger. Doom, most essentially, is not going to be making any sort of rotations. So he's kind of stuck in this 1v1 scenario up against the Tidehunter. So they set themselves up with lanes that are really, really beneficial to themselves. The trade-off is a bit of a risk with their aggro tri-lane, but mitigated by the fact that there's no rotations, but they're setting themselves up for a really big win in the Tidehunter. And Tidehunter is definitely one of those heroes that's going to need a lot of farm. Now, most of the early game is not going to be that important. The tri-lane versus tri-lane goes back and forth, as to be kind of expected. HR have an advantage, so they're going to win out in the tri-lane slightly. A lot of skirmishes back and forth between these two, but there isn't too much to read into this. This is just normal tri-lane versus tri-lane engagement. Nothing too important about it. I'm going to end up scrolling in, kind of ignoring most of the laning phase. I think we basically dropped down the laning phase pretty well. I think we're going to go into a really good example. In fact, I'm even going to pause it and go into about 15 minutes in, I believe. So at this point in time, if you look at the advantage that HellRaisers have, they set themselves up pretty well due to the laning phase. They've gained themselves about 2,000 gold and 2,000 experience. Nothing too massive, though. Power Rangers actually does a really good job continuing to farm up. They make a couple of rotations when they're able to. Unfortunately, their supports aren't good for rotating, which is another thing the HellRaisers are really exploiting with that aggro try. When you have a tri-lane versus tri-lane engagement and you're on the losing side, most of the time you're going to want to rotate your supports out. Try and put pressure on the solos. But unfortunately, Ogre Magi and Dazzle, Ogre Magi is good. Dazzle, not so much, right? No real good disable there. No really good offensive options. You're mainly defensive. So despite that fact, Power Rangers actually make a couple of good rotations, ends up catching some people out. And we're going to see that HellRaisers have an advantage right now, but PR are doing a great job basically exploiting whatever advantages that they can find. Now, what's going to happen here is that Batrider, they try and go for an early smoke here, and they end up running into the Doom, but he's fast enough to get away. This is something that I think shows really good in-game strategy right here, is that we're going to be having Dread, Queen Dread, Master of Streams, has Firefly. And this is going to give him an opportunity to do something that most supports will never have the opportunity to do, which is to get this ward up right here.
Like, this is something we used to see Pilot die literally as a vent, smoke up 15, 16 minutes into the game and just go, okay, well, I might die here.
Yeah.
80% chance I'm going to die, but I'm going to smoke. I'm going to go put this ward down. Very few people do this of their own accord.
Right.
But like you said, Dread finds that Firefly, gets that lucky chance.
Yeah, he sees the opportunity and he takes it. I mean, it's very rare to be able to see that. You have to either smoke up, and that's resources, right, and a lot of risk going into the jungle like that in this area particular, and trying to get a ward all the way back here. But he sees the opportunity with Firefly, and he's going to go for it. And they're going to use this ward to really exploit the next 6 minutes of time that ward has, being able to exploit the vision that they have and make really good rotations. So right now, there hasn't actually been a whole lot of pushing from HellRaisers, but with this ward, they're really going to get into it. So if you watch, they're going to have the Naga Siren farming up. This is pretty typical. For the most part, the Naga Siren's going to be solo in the bottom lane, pushing down this tower slowly but surely. He's going to take it. That's going to happen. If you actually watch here, though, they've actually made a rotation where they're able to take the tier 1 tower, and they're now. Can you bring the document up real quick? They're gonna try and actually form some sort of. It's one or two ways, right? Either Naga Siren sitting solo in the bottom lane. You have 4 heroes up in the top lane. So basically, it's a trade-off, whether you can win the team fight in the top lane because they've got a lot of great team fight heroes and still have the Naga Siren farming bottom. And if they go and gank the Naga Siren, then they just go all in a push. In the top lane, they get a couple of towers. But the other advantage is that you can also just bait out the Naga Siren. So the assumption is, it's kind of the mind games going on here. Oh, there's going to be 4 heroes farming up or in our jungle or something along that. Let's go gank that Naga Siren. But the reality is that HR are actually setting both of their big teamfight heroes around this Naga Siren and using this ward to find exploits. Now, this jump right here, that they just had. They jump in because of that ward. They see the opportunity to make a dive. They know somebody's going to be defending that tower. Whether they gank the Naga Siren or whether they're just defending the tower, they know somebody's going to make that rotation. That's why they make this jump here. They go in. I'm actually going to rewind it just a bit. I went a bit too fast. So they see the dazzle. This is one of the examples, though, of a mistake that they make. A very simple mistake that could have allowed them to get so much more out of this team fight than they actually did. They see the Doom and the Dazzle together. They're going to make the jump with the puck, combined with the Ancient Apparition, who's up in the top lane, farming up. They hit a beautiful combo, and then that happens right there. Arts made a call, and I think it was the right call at the time. I don't think they could have actually killed the Doom. He makes the call where he pops the Song of Siren, and either his team yells at him or he panics and stops it real quickly, but he decides, oh crap, we want to be able to kill that Doom. The problem is he wasn't hit by the Ice Blast, and that's the biggest issue, because he's got his healing going up. He stops it, and then the team fight turns into disaster from there, because Power Rangers make all the rotations. They no longer have that Naga Siren ultimate to be able to get themselves out, but it was still a good example of a really smart play from HellRaisers. They come out much the worst, right? They get a Dazzle, and they trade off all 3 of their cores, but if you think about the way the fight should have gone, which is they get both of those heroes. The Ice Blast missed barely, right? But they should have been able, if the Ice Blast hits, Doom's dead. And then they have the Naga Siren Sleep to follow up. Even if they don't hit the Doom, right? They get the Dazzle, they forced rotations, they pop the Naga Siren ult, and they run away. That should have been a very clean execution where they get the gank and they bounce themselves out. Unfortunately, Artist had, a little bit of, oh god, they're coming, pop Song Siren, and then he was like, oh god, we didn't kill the Doom, undo it.
One TPing to the tier 2.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden it's too late, and it all falls apart. But it's in a good example of a really well-executed gank, really good in-game strategy that they're using there. They just had a minor mistake, and it ends up costing them a lot. It goes to show where this game could have been so much more. And they're going to continue to use that ward, though. They go along for the next 2 minutes, I believe. This time they're going to do the 4 heroes up in the top lane while the Naga Siren sits at bottom, so you could see the rotations. They get a small pick off on the Ogre Magi while they go for this push. Naga Siren, meanwhile, is farming up the jungle, keeping the bottom lane push, but not overextending too much, as you could see. Doom wants to be able to find that pick off, but Naga Siren's making sure to play it very safe. They make, at 19 minutes in, an example of a pick off that they're going to be able to get. Oh, another example, actually, of them missing out on an opportunity there, where they could have gotten the Bat Rider because of this ward right here, and they'd been able to take the tier 2 because of it, but because they just didn't quite get, Bat Rider was just a bit too fast for them, they're going to have to back themselves up here. So, again, another example of using the ward, good in-game strategy, but at the same time, they just fail slightly, where it could have gone so much better for them. From here, the 20-minute mark, you're going to see this push up in the top lane. Big mistake here. Another example of maybe a little bit of miscommunication from HellRaisers. They go for this gank. The push is happening here in the top lane. They're already setting up for it. You're going to see the Rubik teleport here to the tier 2. He's got his Blink Dagger ready to go, so Dread can get the jump on the Animage. The biggest problem is our Puck doesn't make the rotation at the right time. So Ice Blast comes in, they hold the Animage. Puck just now starts teleporting and ends up missing out on being there. But they're still going to have a big exploit, which is Cheshire Cat comes in from the side. Really bad idea. He thought there was just going to be 1 or 2 heroes defending. He ends up getting caught there between the towers. And from here, HellRaisers will use that one pickoff, that one small mistake by Power Rangers, and exploit a lot. So immediately, they're going to go and try and turn that one pickoff into more. So they end up finding the Ogre Magi. If you actually look at the Puck's positioning here, just 20 seconds prior, they get this pickoff, immediately Puck starts making the rotation over.
Well, the rune spawns, so.
Right. Well, but he's also going to be able to, from there, move on. He doesn't even necessarily need the rune to keep on moving. He's going to go into the enemy jungle, makes this completely blind blink, just because he thinks, hey, Animage is farming here, or there's a hero running back. There's many different opportunities here. He just knows that because the Doom is down, they know, with all the heroes that are going to be around, that they can make that kind of jump. They find something extra, and then they do something which I like to call a kind of sweep and clear. They go in, Naga Siren's farming out the bottom lane. They just got a pick off on the Doom as well as the Ogre Magi, knowing Power Rangers can't fight them in any way right now. They're going to do a sweep and clear through the enemy jungle. And they're going to clear through this whole entire jungle and immediately go into the bottom lane with the Naga Siren. to make sure that she doesn't get caught by the Bat Rider pickoff, and they're going to clear through the middle lane at the same time. They're basically getting all the lane control. All the lanes are going to be pushing out, and they're also still going to have the protection for the Naga Siren to make sure that she continues to farm, because she's really close to the relic at this point. This is the most exploitable period of time for a Naga Siren, is right before you get your relic. If you can get a kill on her, it's a big pickoff, because she's going to lose a lot of unreliable gold. Her farming time is going to be drastically slowed down. So that's why HellRaisers make that whole entire sweep through, end up pushing back Power Rangers, and then continue to keep control from here to allow the Naga Siren to be able to farm up. And I think that's just, in general, how many teams would have like immediately gone, oh, we can now push that tier 2?
Yeah.
Right? But instead, they kept their eye on what was most important, which was making sure the Naga Siren gets farm. It's not about taking towers right now. It's about protecting the Naga Siren's farm. Similar procedure is going to be happening here in about 30 seconds, where you're going to see HR do another rotation. Now, see the advantage that they gained for themselves. They actually had a ward here, but it was countered. They also had a ward here because of that pickoff that happened 2 minutes prior. They got the pickoff on the Doom. They sweep through the enemy jungle, lay down some wards, have really good vision there, have good control, and are now going to make another sweep back through because of the fact that they got that vision for themselves. They're going to see opportunities like this one, the Bat Rider. Easy kill. They're also going to, unfortunately, not get the Bat Rider. They'll end up running into the Ogre Magi's instead, but it's still a good pickoff for them. They clear through the jungle once again, and this time around, they're actually going to get caught. So they stick around for a bit too long. They get the Ogre Magi, which is not a big pickoff, right? Bat Rider would have been so much better. But, you know, the problem here is that HellRaisers are acting like they got a pick off on a Bat Rider when all they got was the Ogre Magi, right? They're pushing the lane, thinking that they're good to be able to take. There's no team fight that's going to be forced on them. But the reality is Power Rangers are going to take that opportunity to force a fight. But what they do here, which is really well done, classic Naga Siren push though. 4 heroes in the top lane, 1 in the bottom. So you watch Naga Siren's going to be playing this very, very patiently. And she's going to be sitting kind of far back, not really going too far forward, afraid because they don't think there's going to be a fight here. Now, what happens here is Doom ends up getting a good initiation on the Tidehunter, the most important hero you can lock down right now. It's either the Tide or the Puck.
With Blink Ags as well.
Yeah, and it just destroys the Tidehunter. Puck gets a really good counter initiation, but it's not quite enough. The resulting team fight turns out to be really bad for them. Small mistakes. They can't get the Animage here. The Puck ends up getting caught because he phase shift, and then the fire immediately stops the Blink Dagger that he tried to throw, and he ends up getting caught as well. The end result is 3 heroes go down in exchange for 1. But if you look at it, really good reactions here from the Naga Siren, who, the moment that they show up, the moment the Tidehunter makes that jump, Naga Siren immediately starts pushing forward, which is just classic Naga Siren. But again, the reaction time here allows artists to be able to get a quick tier 2. And even this fight could have gone so much better for them, right? The Puck could have easily gotten out there. His counter initiation was great, but they end up losing. They really shouldn't have lost the Puck, I think, was the biggest deal. But unfortunately, he gets caught. Still, though, they get a tier 2. So the end result is they actually heavily mitigate the advantage that Power Rangers gained for themselves. You're going to see the gold tip down a little bit and experience drop down a lot more. But the important thing here is Naga Siren claiming that tier 2 now has a Radiance. So even though it was a bad fight for them, the trade-off is actually still decently favorable for HellRaisers, mainly because that Radiance is so important. Getting a fast Radiance allows you to get that 40-minute, 6-minute or 40-minute 6-slotted Naga Siren.
Yeah, it's kind of what we used to see, like a year and a half ago, where people would go suicide into towers just to take a Roshan. Like, Roshan was that important that you would make the trade-off for that one thing.
Right.
But now we're seeing smaller trade-offs here and there, like that team fight. You lose 2 or 3 heroes, but then you get a tier 2 or you get a tier 3. You know, you slowly chip away, get into the base. And it's not so much about the big objectives now, but it's taking the smaller victories and adding them up until you actually finish the game.
So now that they have the Radiance and the Naga Siren, it's going to be a bit more of a passive game for a couple minutes while they try and farm up Boots of Travel and the Manta and everything else that a Naga Siren likes to be able to have. They do a couple good defensive rotations for the Naga Siren, making sure the jungle still stays intact. They want to keep this tower alive because it's good positioning to control the jungle. Nothing really big is going to happen here for another 2 minutes. For the most part, farm up on both teams. Power Rangers will search for pickoffs like this one here. Naga Siren, really great reactions with the Song of Siren. able to get it off where the Doom could get off his ultimate. And unfortunately, Power Rangers could have been able to turn that into a tier 1 tower, but because of the missed opportunity there, they don't end up getting it. They farm up for, let's see, another minute or two. I think the 27-minute mark. Yeah, standard farming, nothing too big here. Oh. So this is the pickoff that they're going to find here. The puck ends up finding an invis rune. Another example of something small that they end up getting, some sort of small mistake or some sort of small advantage. Invis rune, pretty simple. Ends up finding the Animage here. And the advantage that they take from this is really good, but again, just barely missing out on a better, bigger opportunity. So Animage pickoff, pretty simple, silence into the Ice Blast. Pretty well executed. Ditchira gets out with just a little bit of HP, but Puck is still able to catch up. And note also some interesting item builds here. We have the Puck going for a Midas, knowing that this game is going to stretch on late. I think that's a really good read. You have a lot of team fight potential here for HellRaisers, but because of the fact that Naga Siren didn't get like an 18-minute radiance, right? They know this game's going to draw on a little bit. They miss some opportunities, so the Puck Midas is actually going to do really, really well for them, because you're going to see later on, after this Yule Scepter, he ends up going for the Aghanim Scepter, which I would argue is probably one of the biggest item pickups they could have had.
Also hitting level 16 that early against a lineup which doesn't really have natural BKB carriers, like Doom may go for one, Anti-Mage maybe a bit later after his Battle Fury Manta of Vlads. I guess Batrider after 4-staff Blink, same kind of thing, BKB, but they're going to be so much later than you finish off your next couple of items.
Right. Let's see. I have written here. Oh, the advantage that they have ends up playing into them naturally making a rotation into the tier 2. Again, it's nothing really mind-blowing stuff. It's just really good, solid strategy. Where I personally feel like they could have pushed this a little bit more aggressively, could have really taken down this tower a lot faster, but they're playing it very safe, right? The big counter initiators sitting behind the Naga Siren, waiting for some sort of Doom initiation or anything like that. And this will, I believe, play into them taking the tier 2. And just take a while. They played very, very safe. Oh, and then they make this rotation. Pause. Where they go for the Batrider. Right? And this is another example of like a missed opportunity that they could have had. The Batrider, what they're going to do here is quite smart from HellRaisers. They're going to teleport in with the Naga Siren, knowing that the Batrider is somewhere up here. The result, though, is actually devastating for HR, because they end up missing the Batrider because he blinked to the right rather than the left. Just simple 50-50 chance. Well, we missed him. Not much we can do. But HellRaisers make a very simple mistake here, which is they're going to keep pushing they're going to stick around. They're not even trying to push necessarily. They're going to end up sticking around without having Song of the Siren. And the result is pretty devastating here, I believe, for HR. First initiation onto the Tidehunter. There goes that ultimate. Rubik instantly dead already. Naga Siren can't do anything about it, and that's why they don't even need to focus the Naga Siren. No Song of Siren to be able to allow escapes. So even if they don't get the big carry, they actually forced out a Tide buyback. Not necessarily forced, but he uses it just to make sure he can get back into the fight. But Power Rangers, really good control by them, instantly back up the moment they hear that sound. And the end result is they get 2 kills, buyback on the Tide. In general, they just bought themselves probably a decent amount of room to be able to farm up more on this Animage.
And it's one of those things, adapting to situations where you miss the kill and bat, and like you said, they stuck around too long. But also, when teams are posturing to fight each other, you'll notice Tide sits, 600-700 range behind his allies to get ready to blink in and ravage. Tide was sat there, smack bang in the middle, next to the Naga Siren, in plain sight of everyone. The AA TP'd away. They weren't getting ready, they weren't prepared at all for any kind of engagement from PR, so it just hit them like a truck out of nowhere.
And so it goes to show that HellRaisers, like a lot of what's keeping them behind, a lot of the games that they win would be won so much easier if they just cut down on some of these smaller mistakes that they have. And it's something that why I had so much faith in HellRaisers is that they would make a lot of these small mistakes. A lot of these issues would come into play just 6 months ago, but they repeatedly cut down on it. They make sure they're a lot more vigilant on their positioning with the Tidehunter you were talking about. Most of the time, like 90% of the time, he's been in really good positioning to make sure he's able to counter-initiate. He's not going to be caught. 2 times he gets hit by the Blink Doom, and that's kind of going to happen eventually. But again, cutting down on those mistakes is going to make you a much stronger team. But I think for the most part, I believe that mainly this the 20 to 30 minute mark displays a lot of a lot of their strengths, which is the fact that they know when to make rotations. They know really well how to exploit certain weaknesses in the enemy draft. The example of the aggro try, the rotations that they made, the kind of the 4-man clearing through the whole entire map to make sure Naga Siren has plenty of room to farm, also putting pressure on Power Rangers, making sure they're not able to farm up. I think that this game, the reason I chose this game specifically is a lot of other games that you would see HR run through this is that they would end up just kind of stomping and be like over by 30 minutes. Right. This is a game that shows where they make the right plays, but due to just some small things, right? Some of it's actually bad luck, like for example that Ice Blast being slightly off on the Doom, and then that bit of a bumble with the Song of Siren resulting in a really bad fight for them. That actually should have been a great fight for them. Very small bad luck or minor mistake that ends up costing them a lot. But the theory is there, right? It's the right idea going in, forcing that fight. And using that ward to their advantage, I think, is some of the displays most of the strengths of HellRaisers.
Yeah, the big picture stuff is definitely there for them. In-game calls seem to be great. The overall drafting, I think, has been, like you said at the start, really strong for them. Drafting-wise, I think they're one of the stronger teams out there, actually, now. So a lot of the bigger teams are still trying to find their way and find heroes to actually fit into how they play, whereas HR are like, okay, we're just going to bring this out. We know how to play this.
They definitely do have off games with drafting. That's definitely one of their downsides. Power Rangers from there will go on and win the next 2 games, and I would argue it's purely because of draft. If you guys haven't watched this series, I'm just going to reveal it just so we can see the draft. So here's that. So this draft, for example, I would say easily lost in the laning phase. They pick up the Wisp Tiny 1-2, and then they go for Juggernaut Lion, and then a Centaur as well. It feels like a bit too greedy. They end up losing pretty much all of their lanes versus Power Rangers, who have a lot more. I mean, Power Rangers are known for being able to win the laning phase anyway, but they definitely exploit the fact that, hey, we've got an advantage here with just stronger rotating supports and able to do a lot more in those first couple of levels.
So much easier to adapt with heroes like Rubik and Tidehunter as well.
Yeah, and HR do what they can to address the issues. What Power Rangers do here is they end up running an aggro try, and then I believe Tidehunter in the safe lane, and then they swap out the Tide at a certain point once he hits level 6 and a Blink Dagger. He goes up to join the other 2 supports. HR do the right idea, which is they rotate Lion down to join the Centaur, who's going up against the Puck safe lane, I think it was actually. And it's in general the right idea, but they were just too weak in the laning phase to actually be able to do anything, and they're at a huge disadvantage by 20 minutes. It's like a 15,000 gold lead, and then game 3 actually so much worse than that. Game 2 they actually had a fighting chance. Game 3 wasn't even close. They again, they go for a bit of greed here. Phantom Assassin, Brewmaster, and Doom with a Disruptor who doesn't do anything in the early game. Rubik as well as, can be really good in the early game.
A 10-0-6 Skyrath.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the Skyrath, I mean, J4 just dunked on them this game because he was able to do so much. And look at the synergy that Power Rangers had. They went for the last pick Broodmother. Right. HR just got caught out by that. They have no AoE to be able to deal with that except for Brewmaster. Like, Brewmaster, that's not a hero that you want locked into one lane, right? If the Brewmaster has to stay where the Broodmother is, then you're forcing Brewmaster to basically be a 1v1 hero when he's so much better as a mid-game teamfight hero. Like, that's his biggest strength. That's his biggest draw. So, because of that pickoff, that pickup, that 5th pick, the Broodmother, it ends up just destroying HR. Plus, a lot of their greed ends up killing them as well because they can't get any early game traction with their supports because they went a little greedy with it. They don't really have the carries, the cores that are going to be able to use the positioning, right? They have Disruptor and Rubik, big positioning supports, and actually can do a lot in the early game, but are very dependent on their cores. Right, you glimpse something back, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be able to get the kill if your core doesn't do any damage. And I would say Doom in the laning phase, very weak in general. Like, he's a good farmer, he stays alive, but he can't actually provide any offensive actions. Phantom Assassin can have some offensive abilities, but for the most part, you're more scared of the big nukes that are coming out from the supports at that point. So their really only good hero there was the Brewmaster, and he was, again, locked down by the Broodmother. So they definitely do have some off games when it comes to draft. I think this last one mainly came down to the Broodmother pick that just destroyed them.
Yeah,
And that's, again, a simple drafting mistake, right?
Well,
Forgetting about the Broodmother 5th pick.
It's kind of difficult though, because if you start your strat and you start thinking, okay, I'm going to build up to this, I'm going to pick PA in the middle of the draft, and then have these last couple of heroes, pick up the Brewmaster second, pick up whatever, the Rubik last, then you can't really defend yourself against the Broodmother pick, because you don't really want to waste a ban on it.
Yeah.
So you know it's there, and you know it's a possibility, but building your entire draft to pick, to go up against a hero that may or may not be picked is really difficult.
Yeah.
So I'd say it's less of their drafting error than Power Rangers clocking on and saying, if we pick Broodmother here, it's going to be really good.
Yeah. I would say it's like 50-50 for me, because like some of the pro players I've talked to, it's just like when Broodmother was entered in the game, it was just like, oh, okay, this is really annoying for drafters, because that's your job as the drafter to keep in mind all the potential heroes, and Broodmother's now going to be one of them. It just means that you have to read, okay, is Broodmother going to wreck us here? Then it has to be a 5th pick Broodmother. You just kind of have to be like, well, it sucks, but they're going to get, some strong hero, but a Broodmother is just going to be too good, right? And so for me personally, I would say, like, I would put that on HR, just like,
Okay.
Yeah, you needed to be able to ban it out and just let them have another strong hero, because the Broodmother was going to be too much. And personally, like, looking at the draft, I saw it and I could just, in my mind, imagine their team speak and just going, Broodmother, shit.
I guess Lycan as well with the howl.
Oh, yeah, exactly. They already had the Lycan there, and
True.
then the Broodmother comes into play, and there's just like, oh, all right, we lost. Really good lane control, automatic pushing. Yeah, it's just...
So you put 6 or 7 Spiderlings onto Disruptor or Rubik, and they're just dead with Howl.
If they have no escape mechanisms, they have no good AoE control. Like, Kinetic Field is probably the best thing that they have at that point. Kinetic Field, run outside of the fence and hope the spiders can't chase you.
Thunderstrike, and that spider just runs off somewhere else.
Yeah,
like, what are you
exactly.
going to do now?
So... yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed that. Let me know at dota-capitalist on Twitter if you guys enjoyed it. If you want me to be a little bit more succinct with it, this may be something that we do more of in the future. In fact, I'm supposed to do 2 more. We'll see if that happens.
We're going to play it by ear. Anything is possible, Cap. Anything is possible.
Virtus Pro is definitely going to be a short one, because really I just want to talk about the Vengeful Spirit picks that they do better than anyone else.
Apparently, Anuxi just saw me on stream and said, "What's PPD doing in Germany?"
A couple of people have said that. They look like
I've
PPD.
been called PPD. I've been called Vic Reeves. I don't know if you know. He's an English comedian. No, it's basically just because of the glasses. I'm English, so I've been called Vic Reeves.
Gordon Ramsay.
I'm just waiting for the Harry Potter stuff to come out now. Like, what's Harry Potter doing in Berlin? Please no.
I'm not going to say he looks anything like Daniel Radcliffe.
No, this is what I could never understand. It was just the glasses and the English accent make people think.
You're automatic Harry Potter.
I am Harry Potter.
If you could rap like Daniel Radcliffe, now that would be impressive.
Oh, I discovered that last night, actually.
You did?
I've
Yeah.
not seen
Pretty
this.
impressive, man.
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, but you want to know why I discovered that?
Why?
Because I might pull it out for
Well,
for
you
the
want
singing
to try
time.
it during the singing session?
So
It's
I
not
actually
an easy song, man.
I actually memorized this song back when I was a kid in high school, because I was going to do it for the talent show. I ended up bailing on that, but at one point in time I could do the song, and the reason that it showed up last night is because I tried it out last night. I still got it. I think I can do it. I think I can do it. I did it like twice. I still like the end the W and X line are like incredibly hard to do. So I may end up fumbling on that one, but I think I can still do it.
Well, we're going to wait and see, Cap. For now, we're going to get to a short break, and we'll be back. We got 1v1 matches coming up next, and who knows, maybe Zoe can kick your ass right here on live stream. It's going to happen. Sorry,
Bro.
Sorry. She just said that there is no maybe.
So he just walks into the studio right as that happens.
Good timing.
Perfect timing. All right, we'll be back in a moment.